All right, what's going on, everybody? This is your professor, Dr. Chase Austin, and welcome to week number 14. That is right, week number 14 of 9410, which is your Cultural Heritage Seminar course. As always, I am your professor, Dr. Chase Austin, and we just have a little bit of housekeeping to do. Then I'm going to soapbox, and then I'm going to let you all go. First of all, this is a 15-week course and we are in week 14. So if you are a math major, and hopefully even if you are not a math major, you know what that means. That means that we have reached the end of the course. As you all know, this is a course that I designed from scratch and that I am looking forward to improving as I am allowed to teach it again. However, I will say that I've been very pleased with what has gone on in the course so far. I have also taken a lot of notes and see what, at least some of the things that I need to change and some of the things that I need to retain. And I look forward to seeing the teaching evaluations so that I can know even further from you all what I do and don't need to change. However, week 15's prompt is for suggestions, and there are, so the things that you are comfortable putting your name behind, I would like you to go ahead and just go ahead and enter those things in, generate some discussion with your classmates as to how this course can be improved. Because if I'm going to leave any sort of mark on this institution, then I want it to be that I was able to create and implement some form of successful cultural heritage course. All right. So we got that out of the way. Now, here's something that I want you all to look at because I think that the reason this was assigned got kind of lost. So it looks like everybody with a medical exception, everybody has done their mini interview with the cultural heritage worker. And I've mentioned this before. The reason I have this assignment in here, even though it's such a short, easy assignment, is because it's vocational guidance. A lot of people just aren't really aware of how they can get into, how they can get into cultural heritage work. Now, with you all being librarians, hopefully you're going to have an in if you decide to leave library land and do something else within the heritage realm. But this is vocational guidance to try to help you all see exactly what you need to do, what opportunities are out there in heritage work, and what you need to do to get there. So if you make the time, if you have the time, I would like you all to look at what your classmates have provided you with, because this is good. Well, in my opinion, at least, it is good information for those of you who want to know what type of cultural heritage opportunities are out there and how you get those jobs. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say. Second thing that I wanted to say is your four heritages. Paper, I am still in the process of grading. I am roughly halfway done, and I will say I'm largely satisfied with what I have so far. What I will say is not everybody did what I was kind of looking for in the prompt, but that's okay, because here's the thing. Again, this is my first time teaching the course, as you all know. And so one thing that I have to do is just kind of look at the papers that come in, how students respond to the prompt, and then I can fix the prompt once I know what messages students are getting from the prompt. So I've had some people who did really out of the park jobs, and I think they just understood what I was saying in the prompt a little better. However, that does not mean that those who did not figure out what I was looking for did anything wrong. Not at all. Again, this is a prompt that I created, and I know that if I fix the prompt, then I'll have more students doing what I had envisioned the students doing. So I'm going to be working on my prompt, but so far so good. And if you haven't gotten a grade on that yet, you will be assigned a grade somewhat soon. It won't be very long. Okay? So that's another thing that I wanted to just kind of put in as a buzz in your ear. The only assignments that you have left are the final paper, which I know some of you have already started research on. If you have not started, then please begin soon. And then you also have the remaining discussion board prompts. But outside of that, there are no more outstanding assignments. So if you are looking good grade-wise right now, and most of you are, then it's a good chance that you're going to continue looking good grade-wise all the way through having me record your grade into MyZoo. So that is what I'm hoping for all of us, and yeah, hopefully we will all get there. Now, here comes the soapboxing part. I actually wanted to talk a little bit about what your prompt was last week, about what was going on with the Paseo and what happened here in Kansas City with that big fiasco. Now, first of all, I will say that the reason that I included this unit and was excited about this unit, this module about the Paseo, is because it happened right here in Missouri, and I figured local stuff would be of the most interest to the students. And I know, with me coming from the South in particular, I know that a lot of content was Southern content, but I did try to mix it up. And we've had journal articles, reading articles from, St. Louis. We had our Route 66 article and all those types of things. But I included the Paseo module because this was something that was happening in our own backyard. Now, I have started looking at the discussion responses, and based on how people are responding in the discussion, it doesn't sound like this particular module went over well. So that's okay. If it's a module that I have to get rid of and replace, I am more than happy to do that. And in fact, it would be old news by the time I teach this class again. It's something that just happened in 2019, but let's say I don't teach this class again until 2022, which is a real possibility. That means that it'll be old news by then. So if I need to replace this module, I will do so. I think I've gotten that suggestion already in the comments for week 15. So if you feel the same, by all means, say so. But one thing that I wanted to just drive home, given that this module clearly tanked, clearly it did not work, clearly you all didn't like it, because of that, I do want to explain a few other things as to why the prompt for the discussion was what it was, as well as to just sort of give you a little bit of an overview, as a former newspaper reporter, give you a little bit of an overview as to why when you're dealing with cultural heritage and when you're dealing with a lot of other stuff, for local issues, you can't depend entirely on what is produced by the national media. Sometimes you have to get local with it. Let me pause for a second. Okay, so first of all, I actually wanted to show you all a quote because it's a quote that I really like, and it's from a professor at a former professor at Coastal Carolina University who I also really like. Very, very intelligent, very nice guy, and very passionate about history. His name was Dr. Wink Prince. And as we can see, Wink actually stood for something Eldred. So Dr. Eldred Wink Prince, the quote, "All history is local history somewhere, and no history properly understood has merely local significance." So when we're talking about cultural heritage, this also applies. I will definitely steal and, of course, give credit. So maybe I'm not stealing, I'm just citing. Ha ha ha. But I will definitely cite and refer back to Dr. Prince's his quote here and say that this also applies to cultural heritage. I shouldn't say all cultural heritage is local cultural heritage somewhere, but absolutely a lot of it is. And as far as when Wink Prince says no history properly understood has merely local significance, I would definitely say that about cultural heritage. If you properly understand heritage sites in any city or any state or country, anywhere, then you understand that these things are not just of mere local significance. And so when we talk about Paseo, when we talk about what happened here in Kansas City in 2019, a controversy that made national news and had people calling people from Kansas City racist and all kinds of stuff. It was not a good time, I would say, to be a resident of Kansas City. And I even had people on social media, friends back home, being like, what the hell is going on out there? And I just tell them, man, this is something that was handled a lot differently by the local press, by the Kansas City Star, by the local news stations here, Fox 4 and the others. This was handled much differently by local press than by national press. And I could have made this argument more strongly if I had access to the Kansas City Star that I could offer you all. However, I just do not. Kansas City Star and the University of Missouri have not come to workable terms for providing full text access of present or even archived and historical content, which is unfortunate. But the way the Paseo naming controversy played out in local news was very, very much different from how it looked on the national scene. Basically, on the national scene, from what I can gather, is that these national news outlets pretty much just told the entire country Kansas City votes to remove Martin Luther King's name from a major thoroughfare. And people who were not familiar with what was going on here in Kansas City, they just saw that national headline. They saw that we removed Martin Luther King's name from a major road. They didn't really have the greatest context as to why, and they thought that we were just a bunch of backwards racists. Now, as Caitlin pointed out in the discussion prompts for the Paseo discussion board, and thank you, Caitlin, for pointing this out. Yes, the head of the Save the Paseo group, or one of the heads, I don't know if he was really the head, that got very confusing on a local level, actually. But one of the leaders of the Save the Paseo group was African American. And also the Paseo is located in a primarily African American community. For those of you who don't know, yes, Kansas City is very much racially segregated. This city has been redlined. So Black people tend to live on the east side of Troost Avenue in this city, and that's pretty much how people want it. Living in this city, I can see that Black and white people don't interact a whole lot and don't really seem to care for each other that much. So I'm not at all surprised that no one really complains about this blatant segregation that occurs in this city. However, a lot of the people who were involved in getting Martin Luther King's name removed from the Paseo, basically having the name go back to the Paseo, were African American people who lived in that community. And a lot of people who wanted that name changed, and this is something that the national media totally flopped on, is that a lot of the people who wanted that name changed to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard were Black people in they were Black people who were residents of Kansas City, but many of them were people who did not own property in the Paseo and did not live in that area. Nowadays, people are kind of pricing out of the Paseo, meaning that I know that the area has been, well, the Troost Avenue area has been gentrified, the Paseo not so much, and the Paseo is east of Troost Avenue. But what has happened is that these people who are influential African Americans in Kansas City, and this includes Emmanuel Cleaver, these people who, again, have questionable ties to the Paseo currently at best, they decided they wanted to name that thoroughfare after Martin Luther King Jr. because Kansas City is the largest city in the United States of America that does not have a road named after Martin Luther King Jr. And they decided to go where they thought there was not going to be a lot of political pushback. They decided they were going to go to a lower income African American community, and they decided that they were going to make basically decisions on the name of their community for them. And they did not engage these people. And so that's why there was a backlash. So when you talk about Save the Paseo, that was not, in the national media, it looked like a white group. And when you are local, you know that there were a lot of Black people who were involved in the Save the Paseo initiative. And we had, yes, Asian and Latino people, Latinx people as well. So the national media really made this look more racist and more ridiculous than it really was. But again, that's why when you are handling heritage issues, a lot of times, when possible, you are going to want to get those local news sources because they handle these issues a lot better. So where we are with this right now, I know that Emmanuel Cleaver is still attempting to get the name changed. And there has been some pushback. We have a major thoroughfare in this city, J.C. Nichols Parkway, that is, and I've talked about Miller Nichols before, same family. J.C. Nichols was very much involved in the redlining and the segregation of Kansas City. And there is a major thoroughfare named after him in Kansas City. And there has been a petition going around Kansas City, which I have signed, which is really requesting that the city government change the name of J.C. Nichols Parkway to Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. And that way you're not messing with the Paseo. You are actually going after something that is named after a racist and after a segregationist and is in a better part of town. So one thing that you find with Martin Luther King Jr. as well is that they slap his name on what they call the rough parts of town in places where the property values are not high. A lot of times these places are high crime areas. That is actually a running joke that Black comedians have even been making for years, is this joke of, oh, you're on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in your city? You better get out of there before nightfall. I have heard so many comedians make that same joke over and over again, but there's a ring of truth to it. And some people, some Black historians say that this is done to insult Martin Luther King's legacy. Put his name on some of the most segregated areas of a city and put his name on areas that are not well thought of. So this initiative to have J.C. Nichols Parkway actually renamed after Martin Luther King Jr. is really kind of profound, and it's got a lot of support from white people here in Kansas City, who also think that, hey, why not take the road named after a segregationist and rename it after someone who is anything but a segregationist? So I think it makes sense, but those in power, weirdly enough, are not really trying to engage that particular petition. And I will say personally, I believe that part of that is just, quite frankly, because the Nichols family still has a lot of wealth and a lot of power here in Kansas City. So that's what it is. This is where we are. And this is how the legacies of those who may not have been the greatest actors, this is how they are preserved. It's because a lot of times their descendants have political clout, money, and political power, and people are just scared to mess with them. So that's pretty much what it is. Now, I will say this, I have no reason to believe that the living members of the Nichols family are racist people. I don't have any reason to believe that at all. Miller Nichols is deceased, J.C. Nichols is deceased. So the people that I have brought up are not living people, but they are people who there is a lot of historical stuff written on them that is archived here in Kansas City. And so therefore, I'm not necessarily blowing the cover off of anything. This is some well-documented history that I'm just telling you all about, okay? And it's not about starting trouble. It's just about explaining why an unfortunate situation occurred the way it occurred here in Kansas City. So having said that, there's not too much more need for me to talk. I just wanted to address what I was seeing in the discussion prompts. We are at almost 20 minutes, so I am going to end it right here. I hope you all enjoy the readings for this week, which is that food, cultural heritage. And if you are somebody who's a little chunky like Dr. Jace, then you love talking about food. And so I hope you all enjoy this particular